if you are in the business side of things like me,
Mm-hmm.
it is about networking. You do have to go to
Um,
conferences. There are a lot of different conferences out there
which
in the
one can you
States.
tell us?
Yeah. I think if you want to know more about the industry itself, I think the go-to is the Augmented World Expo. That's in California every year. I know there are a lot of people from Central America, South America who come up and they're from all over the world. But for your audience, being where you are, it's not hard to get to California for a couple days and spend some time and really understand what technology's out there, what's coming. It's a really cool place to be. Everybody's really friendly.
I'm your host, Victor Andres, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of extended reality, aka XR, with no other than Doug Smith. Doug is a seasoned expert in the field of XR with a wealth of expertise in virtual and augmented reality, immersive technology, and the future of human computer interaction. If you ever wonder where XR is headed and how it's going to shape the industry, this episode is for you. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Right. Now, Doug, before we we get into the latest technology of XR, we want to hear about you. We wanted to tell you how do you get there where you are, and how do you get engaged with XR.
Yeah, it was really just by a mistake almost, where I didn't grow up in the tech world. I didn't study technology. I was actually in construction for a lifetime before this, and one of my biggest problems that I ran into with construction when it came to developing projects and construction projects was working with communities, working with cities and counties and states, and the neighborhoods in those areas to try to get them to understand what a project would look like once it was built. And so, drawing things on paper and providing pictures of what it might look like, that's what we've always done in the construction industry. And a lot of times it just didn't work. People didn't understand it. They could see the pictures, but it didn't really ring true to them, any sort of real world application. And so I was looking around for a way to share those ideas and share those project ideas in a little more immersive way. And
Mhm.
VR came right to the front of my mind. Teamed up with a company here in Columbus to try that out, and it worked really well. We took a couple land use development projects and put them in VR, and we were able to show the neighbors and the city councils and the governments about what that's going to look like, and it just immediately changed how people perceived it, how they saw it, because it was a more realistic way of viewing the actual project idea than just on paper.
Yeah, that's so true. So you come from construction, so you are an architect or
Project manager, yep, construction manager, yep.
wow. Okay, so that was the door to open into this world.
It
And
was, yeah.
yeah, it was. And with XR, well, XR is evolving rapidly. And from AR enhanced shopping experiences that now clients can do, to fully immersive VR training as training for maybe perhaps hotels that need some training in certain areas. These applications will seem limitless. Where do you see the biggest advancements happening today?
Yeah, so when I started in the VR space about 5 years ago, really it was really in the training space. So my background, in addition to construction, was in education. So my first life was education, then construction, and so kind of melding those two together, using this awesome immersive technology. 5 years ago was a lot different than it is today.
Oh, yeah.
A lot has changed, of course, and for the better. Even back then, 5 years ago, it was really cool, really great technology to put people in a headset. For example, I have a headset right here, of course, and you pop that on them, and they can learn very, very quickly, very, very easily these complex topics and these difficult, training scenarios. We started with safety, for example, construction safety. Of course, that's been my background. Started taking some of those those compliance trainings that the federal government has and the state governments have, and building those out inside the headset using the team of developers and programmers and coders and all that to build these really, really intense, realistic scenarios. And so, to answer your question, it's really in the training space is where it's been. Of course, VR has been around and XR has been around
Right.
for gaming for a while. I remember 20 years ago, I was doing virtual reality at an amusement park here in Ohio, where I'm from. And it was, put on the headset and you ride the little roller coaster around in the headset. And it was fun. It was a game. It was neat. But really taking that to the next level, shifting that over to training people and educating people in VR, it becomes a whole new world.
Yeah, and now that you're talking about entertainment and gaming, beyond that, beyond XR, XR is making waves like in industries like healthcare, education, even remote work. But I want to ask you, what are some of the most exciting use cases you've seen that you can tell us about?
They can
Yeah.
share that.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, some things are under a non-disclosure agreement, but I'll share what I can
Right.
that has been interesting. We work with a lot of government entities and schools and higher education, where my team of programmers and developers, a group has an idea. Oh, wouldn't it be cool to do, for example, one of the projects we worked on a couple years ago was a kayak and a stand-up paddleboard. It was for a Department of Natural Resources, so they have all the parks and waterways under their umbrella, and they wanted to show people, it's not so scary to get out there on the water and do some kayaking or some stand-up paddleboarding. Well, how do we show people that in real life, especially if they don't have a lake right next to them right at the time? So we got together with some subject matter experts. We actually bought a physical kayak, brought it in, did some kind of 3D modeling pictures with it, and we were able to recreate the kayak and the kayaking experience along with the stand-up paddleboarding experience. So that was really kind of a fun way to start, developing for not necessarily training. It kind of was a training, but not really a training, but kind of a fun way mixed with some training, and just get people comfortable with that experience so that next time they're out at the lake or the river and they see a kayak, they go, hey, I did this in VR. I'm pretty confident about my abilities here.
That's so true.
Right.
And Doug, you mentioned two things that I really, I'm thinking about it, because 20 years ago, it was just for gaming and it was just interactive. And now businesses are acquiring these technologies for their employees, for better customer experience as well. And you're in the company that you do that as well for your clients. And of course, now that we are in a world where AI has been evolving as well. 20 years ago, it was AI or many more, but now it's like the boom. I think last year was more like a boom, but now it's more like a boom. But with any emerging technology, there comes challenges. Always. Whether it's hardware limitations, costs, especially costs, or user adoption. So what are the biggest hurdles XR faces today, and what needs to overcome them?
Yeah, so breaking down XR into, I've talked a lot about the virtual reality side of things. That's, of course, with the headset. Oh, hey, look, that's the newer version of the same headset I just had. So I have like 100 headsets here. But, we also talk about augmented reality and what you call extended reality, which is everything we don't know about yet that's to come. And so there are a lot of use cases with, of course, training and education there. The biggest hurdle is figuring out what is that content that is going to translate from real world to the extended reality world. And that's where we talk with, educators and trainers and folks and be like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool to do X, Y, and Z? And say, yes, that would be cool. But how do we actually translate that into an immersive experience that's going to be, manipulative and interactive, and people can actually engage? So it's not, so it is actually different from a PowerPoint or a video training, because we want it to be different, because we want to harness that power of immersive technology, because it can be very hands-on and very interactive, and a very easy way to learn. So the biggest hurdle there is just finding the content and understanding the content that makes sense in VR, because not everything does.
Right, that's so true. And also with the costs and the limitations that many companies might would like to acquire, but they might think that it's very expensive, or how do they know to adopt this technology? Or do you make like a assessment for the company to see if they have the abilities or the requirement as a company to have this technology on board?
Yeah, of course, every company is different. Manufacturing's huge with using immersive technology simply because they have machines and you can overlay different 3D models and animations onto the machines using augmented reality, or you can replicate those machines inside virtual reality and do those experiences that way. But it really does start with prototypes, I think. And to your point, cost can be a big factor and a big barrier for folks to get in. As you might say, a company wants to do X, Y, Z, and ABC as part of a piece of a training content, but that's going to cost a lot. So let's try something a little bit more pared down, a little bit simpler, just so you guys know, especially if you've never done it before in your organization. Let's do a prototype. Let's do a proof of concept. Let's build it. The cost isn't that big of a barrier for most companies. And if it's AR, they might need a tablet or a phone or something. If it's VR, they might need a headset, which I think retails today around $300 to $400 US. And so just figuring out what makes sense for them as far as a prototype, trying to figure it out. My team's there. I'm there frequently. Talking to customers and saying, okay, here's how you're going to integrate this content. Here's where you're going to do that. Here's when you're going to do that. Let's get some feedback from some of your employees, some of the people that you're training, and really figure out, is this going to be a barrier, or is this going to be easily adapted into your existing environments?
Looking ahead, what's your vision for XR in the next 5 to 10 years? Are there any groundbreaking developments on the horizon, like using AI in this specific field?
Yeah. Oh man. It's tricky talking about this tech because it moves so quickly. And 5 to 10 years, gosh, I don't, we'll probably all be on the moon looking back at, who knows what's going on. But, if I were to guess, I would say with AI, of course, and we've been doing this the past year, like you said, last year, AI has really taken off. So we've been really integrating some of the AI elements into the VR. And I think that's going to be where it's going, because without AI, you have these kind of pre-scripted interactions. Yes, they're fully manipulative. They're super engaging. But with AI, what we could then do is integrate some of that AI into there. And now it doesn't become a pre-scripted thing. It becomes a very fluid, open-ended back and forth between the user and the material and the objects and everything that's going on inside the headset or inside the augmented reality. So AI is not only a game changer itself, but it's a game changer for the immersive tech industry as well.
That's so true.
Right.
And what's your take on, so you use AI for the scripting part that was more mechanic or more manually with humans, and you need to automate that. So humans don't have to do it one thing over and over again. So you use AI also for the creative part as well, to see the prototype and to make it more quicker and
We
faster?
do, yeah. It's really interesting. Just in the past few months, we launched an internal product that now schools and enterprise organizations can use, that uses AI. It's a development tool. So if you're familiar with anybody out there who's listening, it's Unity or Unreal Engine. Those are engines. Those are softwares that you would use to create the actual 3D objects and animations. Those are the go-to. Unity's, I think, a little more popular. It's a little easier to use than Unreal. So that's kind of what we use here for the most part. But what we've done is taken that kind of Unity software and then overlaid it with some AI and some no code kind of scripting, where anybody, you could jump in there today, and within an hour or two, you could create an XR experience. So we do that for ourselves internally too, because it's really streamlined how we develop, especially those prototypes, and giving people some ideas about what they might want to do with VR or AR, and then taking it from there. the interactions themselves, especially when you were talking about hospitality. You're at a hotel. Well, how do you train somebody in a virtual reality headset or even on a computer where they can actually talk to an avatar or a virtual person who's not real? It's a model, but you're actually interacting with them in a real conversation, just as you would with a normal person.
That's
So
so
that
true.
that's where we are today. And back to Victor's point, that's where it's heading the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the AI avatars, that today, well, this year was more like a boom. These agents for sales as well, and especially for retail. And yeah, that's true. People would like to have more interactive conversations, and perhaps we don't know. With you might think it's a real person, but at the end, it's not. So that is really weird. But yeah, that's where it heads basically. And Doug, now talking about the business side for these type of studios who have these XR experiences for the customers and for clients, within at least you can give us a scope of a year. How much does a company of this type of companies that people would like to create from zero, ground zero here in Latin America, will need to figure out of the costs, how much they could have this ROI, and if it's a good business to begin with this today, especially today in the tech world?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to approach it. If you have viewers who are actual developers, or they have
Mm-hmm.
maybe a team of folks who can develop for them.
Yeah.
So that's the first step is, are you going to build a skill in this immersive technology? And that's the first question you have to figure out. Myself, I've played around with developing and programming, but I'm not a computer science person. I'm not a programmer. So my skill set is very limited. Even though I can create some stuff, I've got a team that can do that for me. So I'm more on the business facing side of things, and that's kind of the other path. So you could go the skill set of developing the skills of developing and programming and coding and all that, or you can go more on the business side of things like I did and say, okay, here's some ideas on what we can develop and what content we can create, and then finding users for that. And whether that's your own product that you're creating, or maybe you team up with groups like ours. We have content that's off the shelf, and you have schools and enterprise manufacturing companies that you know or work with, and they're interested in incorporating some of this XR into their own functions. Then team up with somebody. That's perfectly fine. But I think in our industry, especially in the States here, a realistic expectation or goal rather would be to try to get $1 million US in the first 3 years. That's kind of the goal.
That's the goal in 3 years. So
Mhm.
3 years is to begin to scale. So when you get to 3 years, then the company is scalable. You can say
yeah.
that?
You could say that. Yeah, it's scalable even before that. It just depends. It's going to be a lesser scale, of course. But once you get to that million mark, then you have other companies starting to look at you, and then they'll bring you and do more projects, and projects beget projects, kind of thing.
You have to be a good salesman to sell
You
those
you do have
services.
to do some of that too. Yes.
Have the skills of sales.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes. Also a skill. Yes. Which you can also build in a virtual reality setting.
That's
Yeah.
great.
The last thing that you mentioned of the scalability, I wanted to ask, because you kind of already answered, because you have to be like a good salesman. So you rely more like on many sales, right? Not like a one-time sales, or like a SaaS subscription.
Yeah. So the products that we use, the XR Guru product, those are off the shelf pieces of content. Those are lessons for training and education, and that becomes more of a SaaS model. So you're buying an annual subscription. We're licensing that out to you, and there are some services that we provide on the side, because a lot of schools and organizations, they're maybe not so comfortable with the headset, for example. So we'll provide that just kind of turnkey solution where we'll ship them the headset. It's already ready to go. And then we do, some onboarding and training and support. So that becomes kind of part of our SaaS model, where we want the customer to be successful because we believe in this stuff. And we also want to be successful too, by staying in front of them and being a resource for them. But on the other side of things, to answer the question, you could have some clients who want to do those prototypes. They want to do something that's really custom made, and that's where you're going to lean on your developer team to create that content. Maybe you have a subject matter expert that you have to bring in for certain content. So it just kind of depends which pathway you want to go. In my business, we're doing both of those things. So we're doing the SaaS model and kind of the custom service as well.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So is it good to say that it's better to have the monthly subscription and instead of a one-time sale per customer?
I think you could say that safely in the tech industry in general, not just immersive tech, but technology. When you start talking about getting investors or looking at other outside funding, they're going to be interested in what kind of annual sales year over year you have, what kind of subscriptions you have. So that's kind of the economic model that people are interested in. Now, if you have listeners out there who just want to do their own thing, they don't care about outside funding, they don't care about financing, maybe this is a side gig, maybe this is a smaller gig for them. That doesn't matter so much. You could go out and get those one-time projects and they'd be fine.
Yeah, that's true. I think that clients' wins are the business wins as well. Because if clients are happy, then the business is happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and everybody, it's hard to reach into somebody's brain and like pick out their thoughts and what they're thinking about what the end product's going to look like. So you got to do a lot of that up front, like really just talk it out and understand what it is they're trying to accomplish, and then bring some expertise to the table, bring some creative thoughts to the table about, how you're going to make the customer happy.
Yeah, that's true. And also handling your team and the people. That's also another skill that you have to incorporate.
Managing the whole crew. Yep.
Yeah, that's true. So for businesses or individuals, perhaps as you told us, looking to get involved in these new technologies, these technologies of XR, whether are creators, developers, or investors who would like to invest in a company like this, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say if you're trying to build the skill of developing in Unity, for example, Unity actually has some free courses, and you could type those in to Google, and those will pop up where they have a certification program for folks who are just starting out knowing nothing, and you can start from ground zero all the way up to building as much skill as you want in Unity and developing Unity. It does take some time and effort, of course, but it's a very, very much a project-based, portfolio-based kind of learning where you're actually doing things, you're actually building things. So if you're going that direction and trying to build skills, which by the way, I think, back to that, 5-year forecast, anybody who has knowledge in Unity or Unreal will be able to find a job very, very easily. It's a very competitive market for, individuals who are looking to be employees of companies such as ours. That have that skill set, because most people aren't going that direction. Most people are going to computer science or whatever if they're in tech, right? But if you say, hey, I want to do Unity, that's going to be my skill set. Build it from there. There are some free programs out there to do that. Of course, if you are in the business side of things like me, it is about networking. You do have to go to conferences. There are a lot of different conferences out there in the States.
Which one can you tell us?
Yeah. I think if you want to know more about the industry itself, I think the go-to is the Augmented World Expo. That's in California every year. I know there are a lot of people from Central America, South America who come up, and they're from all over the world. But for your audience, being where you are, it's not hard to get to California for a couple days and spend some time and really understand what technology's out there, what's coming. It's a really cool place to be. Everybody's really friendly. So Augmented World Expo, that's called AWE. That's kind of the industry go-to. And then there are some other like education tech, like ed tech conferences. Each state usually has their own ed tech conference. There's one in Texas and Ohio here, of course, Florida, and so they're all over the place. I would definitely recommend checking those out, whether you're either building the skill or even just networking to figure out, what are the customers buying.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Doug, it's been a real great and incredible conversation with you. Thank you for sharing your expertise and also insights with the future of XR. Where can our listeners find you and also to keep up with your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, you can check me out. I'm on LinkedIn. Doug Smith XR is my tag, and you can check me out there. Feel free to follow me if you'd like, or ask me to connect. Happy to do that. And you can check out our website. We're always posting new content at xrguru.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Doug, and also to our listeners for tuning in. And we'll catch up on the next episode on NOUVA Podcast. Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you.